Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Well, today is the day that if you didn't comply with the pistol brace ban and you're not covered by one of the injunctions, and even if you are, you're technically speaking, you are a felon. You're facing 10 and a half years of jail time for having a pistol brace because now you're not in compliance with the law. That was changed by executive fiat. I have a very strong feeling after the third injunction now by yet another group, and their members are covered. So just to give you an update, FPC was the first one to get an injunction. Their injunction, Mock v. Garland, in that case, covered FPC members and anyone that had a certain vendor pistol brace. Next came GOA, Gun Owners of America. Based off of FPC's injunction, their injunction was greenlit and went ahead. Based on those two injunctions, SAF, which is another shooting sports group, their injunction was joined. So now, there is an injunction that covers a lot of people, millions of people now. This fight still hasn't ended, and now that the debt ceiling stuff, because Republicans turncoated and went ahead and signed their stuff to go ahead and increase the debt ceiling for the next 2 years, there's a possibility that maybe something that the House will do something. I don't see how that is possible because, well, that's just where they're going. But we keep winning in other cases. And what I mean by that is the EPA has lost one case now, which says that EPA can't change. They can't use Chevron deference and make a law. They have to go through Congress to get it done. There's another case that'll be tried in the Supreme Court later this year that has to do with fishing and the EPA getting involved with a fishing vessel and doing some bad stuff and changing the law. When that passes, there will be very good case grounds to overturn a lot of the ATF's rules by executive fiat. Now, we're in this weird space where it looks like people are waking up. And what I mean by that is this woke agenda that's been pushed everywhere is finally getting some pushback. People are just tired of it. I think people have gotten fatigue from being pounded on the head for, 5+ years about this agenda where really a lot of the stuff that they're protesting are non-issues. People really don't care who you sleep with. That's your own business. That's kind of a two-way thing. We don't care. We never have in the two-way. The reason why is this is the one issue, and it's based around freedom, and it's based around, what our core tenets and our core values as a country have always been. Now, I apologize. Yesterday I didn't make a video, mostly because I got sidetracked and had some other things going, so I had to get my stuff ready for my business itself. The business that I hope builds a foundation for the future, for my future, until I get a better audience and podcasting becomes more of a way of life than just a hobby. But I was looking at stuff, and it was just kind of overwhelming to see how many different things are going on in the world, and I understand why people are tuning out. And it's because people are really getting tired. You turn on the news, and you see stuff that is a lie. You watch a movie, and these little woke ideology pieces are stuffed in the movie. You open a book or a comic book, and you see the same thing. And I think that we're at a place in all of our culture, in the American culture, where we're tired of it. Why is it that Memorial Day is one day and we have an entire Pride Month? Now, I understand that these people have been marginalized in a big way, and that needs to be addressed. However, this is not the way to do it, and it's becoming more and more obnoxious because the people that are trying to push this are becoming more and more obnoxious. You know, the blowback on Target and Kohl's is probably because some normal person just walked through there and saw these displays and went, well, what the hell is this? And then they see young kids' bathing suits with tucking stuff. And then they had to answer a very uncomfortable question. And I'm sure normal people just aren't ready to have that conversation yet, nor should they have to. And so there's a lot of people that are finally saying, no, enough's enough. Now, where are we at in the 2A as a whole? I see, as I've said this before, if there's any war on the 2A, it will be even more unsuccessful than the war on drugs. Point of fact is, there are 400 million plus guns in the United States. There's only 350 some odd million people in the United States. It goes without saying that there's going to be a lot of people that aren't complying with this new pistol brace rule. In fact, William Kirk, he's the president of Washington Gun Law, and he's an attorney in Washington State. He's ran some preliminary numbers, and he's saying roughly 2% of people that possibly had the gun ban, or the pistol braces, have complied. That means that there's 39.8 million people that have decided that they're not complying. This is how it starts. You know, you're seeing, if you've been on Twitter or been on any of the social media stuff, Phoenix Ammunition, these are the guys in Michigan who basically turned down a lot of the COVID executive order stuff and stayed open, so much so that they even quit doing business with a lot of government entities so that they could make a statement. And they've been chastised on Twitter by a couple people saying that they didn't do enough or that they backed the governor of Michigan, and that's absolutely false. These guys are red-blooded patriot Americans, just like Gold's Gym in New York. I believe that's the one that was being oppressed during the COVID stuff, where they stayed open and they continued their gym operations despite taking heavy penalties from the law and taking heavy penalties from, what are they called? Basically, the government was fines. There we go, fines. And the reason why I get fines and taxes mixed up is a tax is just something you have to pay. A fine is saying that something's illegal, but it's legal for a price. It's just another tax. But these guys, during the COVID stuff, just like myself, finally woke up. There's a lot of people that have just had enough. Government intervention is not how you win. You win hearts and minds, and then they'll maybe comply if they see that this is a valid argument. And in the 2A, we're seeing more and more people just saying you don't really have a valid argument. We've seen people lie in Congress saying that the pistol braces made guns more, made them fully automatic. That's absolutely false. There's absolutely no way in hell that happens because it has nothing to do with the fire control system of a firearm. And having something go full automatic, you have to interface with the fire control system. If you don't know what the fire control system is, check out some of Mr. Guns and Gear's videos where he talks about the trigger system of both the AR, the AK, and the MP5, and just about any other gun. I won't go through this, but that's what has to be affected, that and the bolt carrier group, to make something full auto. Those aren't being affected by a pistol brace. A pistol brace is on the back of a pistol, and it's designed to help people hold a heavier pistol and shoot it more effectively. Now, some people have taken that as making shorter guns and getting a backdoor way into the SBR realm. The SBR realm is all bullcrap anyway, in my humble opinion. But it is something that is passed law. It did pass the National Firearms Act. That was part of it. The only way we fix that is by overturning the National Firearms Act or start making headway there. If you look at our culture, the 2A culture, never have I seen more suppressors in my entire life. And a suppressor is, to me, a gun accessory that makes it better for shooters so that they're more safe, meaning that their hearing is going to be protected more. But what I'm leading off there is these cultural items, or these items that have been demonized by the left, have become mainstream. And it won't be very much longer, I believe, that we will realize that a lot of the rules, and most of us have known this for a long time, have been wrong. A fully automatic weapon, while it can cause more damage in a very crowded, compressed area, in reality isn't very effective. You waste ammunition, and it's used more so in the military parlances to keep heads down, which is called suppressive fire. And that is, while it's cool, is not something that the average shooter is really interested in. Now, they're interested in having it because you say they can't have it. You allow everybody to have it, you end prohibition, you end up taking the stigma away from it, and you'll see more and more people probably have it, but then there'll be more and more people that just say, that's something I'm not really interested in. Same thing with short-barreled rifles. Short-barreled rifles seem like a great idea until you realize, like, you take an AR-15, you chop the barrel down, and now you've taken the number one thing that the AR-15 had, and that was the bullet velocity is what causes the damage. So now you've lowered its effective range. Now, with that, do I have a problem with any of this? No. That the government involved? Absolutely. But anybody having one of these? Absolutely not. Because there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have this. When the Second Amendment was founded by our founding fathers, they allowed anything. Arms. You can still to this day own a cannon. Despite what Joe Biden says, you've always been able to own a cannon. In the first couple years of the Second Amendment, there was such a thing as privateers, and privateers had the best arms available. Now, why did we change? Because culture changed. If you look at what has been acceptable, it's those FUD guys that we need to worry about. I support the 2A, but. Well, no, you support the 2A, but means that you have some objection to some people having some things. And that is personal preference, not or shouldn't be law. And that's what I see is happening now, is that the awakening is starting to happen, and it happened during COVID, where we were told that they couldn't necessarily come to help protect us. And people started realizing that their own defense is on them. And this has always been the case. Now, fast forward 3 years, those people, those new gun owners, have seen the same thing we've seen in the 2A for years. I've been shooting since I started shooting. My dad started getting me into the sport when I was 5 or 6 years old. Now, you can say that was grooming, or you can say that was responsible gun ownership, and my dad just making sure I knew what these things were. I err on the side of the latter. This is a right. This isn't like driving. Driving is a privilege. This is an enshrined right, a negative right that the government cannot take away. They're trying hard. You see leftists on social media saying, I will volunteer to go door to door. That is the worst plan possible. Because if they go door to door to start taking weapons and arms, there is going to be a rise up, and it will get violent. And that's not me promising or threatening or anything. That's me being a realist and realizing the situation when it gets to that day, if it gets to that day. The only way we fix this, that I know of, is peacefully non-compliant. If you have one of these pistol braces, do your thing. That's what the problem is how are they going to find this unless you broke the law somewhere else? And there is a day that they will come and start finding laws you've broken just to go after you for other things. That day is not today. And there still is a core group of patriots that are in those institutions that will not comply or force the issue. There's also a lot of people that are just there to cash checks that will. Now it's up to us to weed them out. If you look at law enforcement right now, as much as I've demonized them and as much as I've been pissed off because of what they've done to comply for a lot of things, I realize that they're still there to help the poor. And when I say the poor, the people that absolutely cannot afford a firearm themselves, and the people that are absolutely prohibited from having them because of laws. And that means that they're there to help protect them. Now, law enforcement, in my humble opinion, has been pushed into roles that they weren't intended for. Law enforcement nowadays has to be a mental health specialist. That is totally outside of their wheelhouse. They're there to catch a bad guy, possibly shoot one if they have to. I understand why they're having to deal with mental health issues, because there's more of them and they're more exposed to them, and they're trying not to be the guy that shoots first and then asks questions later. But maybe that's why they're shooting first and asking questions later, is that we're pushing them into roles that they weren't intended to fight. In the military parlance, you don't take an F-35 and use it on the ground as an anti-armor asset. It has to be in the air where it belongs and is used for its correct role. That's the same thing with law enforcement. You can't take law enforcement guys that were meant to deal with some of the most brutal situations on planet Earth and then expect them to come out smelling like roses all the time when someone's just having a mental issue that they're not equipped to deal with. If someone's not willing to take commands, this is where the compliance thing comes into effect, is if you comply and you take commands, good on you, take them to court, fight that battle in court, win. Because that will make them change policy. The minute they lose thousands of dollars or millions of dollars and you're still alive because dead men don't tell tales, that's why I say, get recording and then take them to court. Don't fight head to head. You'll lose every time. Because you cannot fight someone you know is 100% armed and has a monopoly on violence right now when we don't have that monopoly. That monopoly has changed. Law enforcement definitively has a monopoly on violence. And that has to change. And that's why the 2A is there, is it makes them have that second guess. And that makes them less likely to act in a big way to go towards a larger populace of Americans. And while those leftists demonize us for having our firearms, they're also the ones protected by us having firearms. Because at any given time, we've seen now that the government will demonize one group or another and make them the enemy of the state. And the reason why they haven't taken huge collective actions where you see mass arrests unless they do something stupid like January 6th, then they leave them alone. They protest, they put them on watch list, but they aren't actively going and arresting millions of people yet. And that it has direct correlation with firearms ownership. Those are my 2 bits on this stuff. And as far as the compliance, you do you. I personally think this is going to go away. Like, share, subscribe, be great.
My politics are rather controversial. Who would have thought that I ain't catching all slack?